So today we welcome Elizabeth Victor from the Santa Clara Bee Guild. Elizabeth is presenting her Master Capstone project with the California Master Beekeeper program right now. And she is going to take us through over the next half hour, explaining to us how she went about establishing a teaching apiary. So welcome, Elizabeth, and thank you for your service to your club and to all beekeepers in Santa Clara who are interested in learning more about beekeeping.
Thank you, Wendy. I have a window in front of my application that's talking about that this is being recorded by a host, and I don't have access to my.
We welcome Elizabeth Victor from the Santa Clara Bee Guild. Elizabeth is also a member of the California Master Beekeeper program, and she is today presenting her master capstone on creating a teaching apiary in her bee guild. So Elizabeth, welcome, and teach us how we too can create a teaching apiary in our bee club.
Thank you, Wendy. For my capstone project, I focused on education and outreach, and the apiary program for the Beekeepers Guild coincided perfectly with my participation in the Master Beekeeping program. So we're just going to kind of run through the slides about a little bit about what were the program requirements and how I met those. I had been an apprentice and a journeyman. I finished those in 2019. I've had bee hives in my backyard for 7 years. I've mentored many members of our guild formally over years or anecdotally as people just email me questions. We do a lot of education and outreach. And I've done a lot of speaking or not continuing education through conferences, the California State Beekeepers Association and the Western Apiary conferences. I've attended 3 of those and listen to podcasts. I love pollination podcasts and subscribe to all the magazines. So, and I've also been an officer for the Santa Clara County Beekeepers Guild. It's actually Santa Clara Valley Beekeepers Guild. So, just a couple of quick topics about being a board member. I was treasurer for 2 years, and then I was president for 2 years. So, and I stepped down from that role in 2021, 2020, I believe. What we did, major things that I did or helped facilitate as a board member was to really revamp our education and outreach program and make it part of our core mission statement. So we created education kits and we created presentations of various levels depending on audiences, and we created speaker request forms that could come in from our website, and we also established a volunteer who would coordinate speakers with requests and make sure that the contact information came through. And we also opened it up to everybody in the guild who wanted to participate. And people didn't realize that they knew more about bees than many of their audience members. So it was a way of boosting their confidence and boosting our ability to perform more outreach in the Valley. And we also were able to establish a honorarium or donations. And so it's become kind of a self-sustaining program, our education program for the Guild. The other thing that happened kind of in the background was more infrastructure stuff that needed to happen for the Guild, which was we were already a nonprofit. Then we decided to incorporate. And so we got some legal counsel pro bono established for that. Then we also transitioned our little scratch paper type of membership organizational disarray into an actual platform that offered all these services for our guild, which is including a credit card transaction, an online directory of all memberships, event planning, event communications, email blasts, etc. So now we have one platform that does all the services that we were trying to patch together for free. And it cost us money, but it's well worth it. And subsequent members of the board have been able to master the platform, so it's not too confusing. We also rebranded the logo for the guild and created templates and shirts and things like that. And the last thing we did before I left was establish a lending library. I surveyed many of the other guilds and looked at their websites and see what kind of services and programs that they offered and what we were lacking. And one of them was a lending library. So prior to the COVID pandemic, we would display all of our books and informally loan them out to people and at every meeting, and had a mechanism for following up if we couldn't retrieve them. But so far it was well received, and it was kind of like try before you buy. Look at these books, see if you want to add them to your library. So that was fun. Moving on. The other thing that we wanted to establish as a program for the guild was an apiary program. And part of the problem was we had a new beekeeper meeting. It was a half-hour talk meeting, but we didn't have any show and tells. We didn't have any group hive dives. So people were really struggling with understanding what was going on in their hive when it was just a talk and slideshow kind of a presentation for them. So we just developed the requirements for our apiary program, which was, you can see on the map, the kind of the dark area shows the parameters of where our membership groups are. It goes all as high as north as Fremont to the Eastern Hills, not quite down south to Morgan Hill, but Coyote Valley. And then of course, many of our members are located on the western side of the valley. We needed storage, we needed water, we needed open space, and we wanted it to be free or low cost to the guild. And we wanted to have year-round access, but also protected from the public so they wouldn't intrude upon the beehives inadvertently or otherwise. So we searched for 4 years. It took us this long to find a suitable spot. And some spots took longer to evaluate than others. One was a orange orchard called the Stockelmeyer Orchard in Cupertino. Another place in Cupertino was the Hammond Snyder House. It was a property, 1 acre property near the Catholic cemetery up there near the cement factory. We went into a purchase option on that property, so there was a lot of evaluation and due diligence. That turned out to be not effective. We tried a walnut farm in Coyote Valley that was ultimately purchased by the Peninsula Open Space Trust. So that would have been just a short interim solution. And then we finally settled on the Ed Souza Community Garden in Santa Clara, which tends to be, if I could go back to the slide, central, right in the very center of our service area. So to discuss a little bit about the Ed Souza Park, it's a new development. It's only been around for, I think, 4 or 5 years. It was kind of a triangular shaped segment that was used as set aside by the state for a cloverleaf development, which never happened. It's on an intersection of a expressway and in kind of a boulevard in Santa Clara. It's a 2.5 acre community garden, but the rest of it is a park and open to the public. It's all landscaped as a pollinator habitat. There's signage all over the place talking about bees and Clara, the mascot beekeeper. It has locked storage sheds and a public restrooms. It's right on a corridor for a bike trail. It has covered pavilions for meetings, and it has an apiary enclosure. So it's really a beautiful little community park. It's located near Section 8 housing, and many people utilize it. It's a wonderful place to be. These are just a few pictures of the gardens. You can see the outside plantings for pollinators, the pavilion where we can do presentations and people can meet. It's covered. You can also see the little blue shed that's shaped at the end of the pavilion. That was it was destroyed in a fire, but that's where the bathrooms were and the storage shed was. And they're going to repair it now. So we had some interim solutions for our storage requirements. And you can see that the gardens are beautiful. They're all ADA compliant. They're raised beds. They have drip system. The garden surroundings are maintained by the city of Santa Clara. And that's a beautiful little squash cluster, and I always go in there looking for squash bees, but I often find only bumblebees sleeping in there. They're beautiful. And this is the apiary enclosure. Now, it took us a year to come to this agreement to use this um, as part of the guild's needs and as part of the park's needs. The director initially just wanted somebody to come in and do hive hosting. And we needed a teaching apiary. So we had to try to struggle to accommodate both of our requirements. And one of which was to expand the enclosure because they just had 2 or 3 panels of that lattice and they just wanted 2 or 3 hives. And we needed more space and more hives to investigate for our workshop. So they agreed to that. We expanded the apiary and did some cost sharing there. They also wanted quarterly outreach to their guild, to their community members, the garden members, not necessarily to the public, but definitely the garden members, because they do a lot of programming for the gardening members. And we wanted monthly apiary workshops only for the guild members. And there's, of course, some fluidity between that because anybody can join the guild and become a member and join the workshops. They're relatively affordable. So we looked at it as also as a recruitment tool for us to be in the garden community. So to prepare the apiary for the guild, we had people voted on it. We had to look for volunteers. We had a guild visit so people could see the circumstances. We had a scrub and paint party for all of those hives. We got those hives from Dedant. Somebody, I think one of their sons didn't want to beekeep anymore, so he gave us some used hives, which we still use. We had to find the swarms or the nukes or the hives from members to stock the apiary. And then we had the COVID lockdown in 2019, just as we were going out of winter, right? So I managed the hives for a year by myself before we started any workshops. But starting in 2021, when the vaccine came out and people were being vaccinated, which was a requirement to join the workshop, we started the apiary workshops. So it says here, 16 monthly workshops. We didn't have 16 workshops every month. We had 16 monthly workshops. So throughout 2021 and 2022, in fact, we just had our last apiary workshop for the year that we put the bees to bed for winter. And it's about 6 members per session. It's quite small in terms of a cluster, but it gives everybody opportunity to get enough hands-on. So we have 5 hives. We pair people up and we ask them to do, whatever process or procedure we're doing on each hive. And so far it's, 96 members have been served and we've got about $1,000 worth of revenue for the guild from it. And it's really affordable. It's $10 per workshop and all of them have sold out every single month. So the format for the guild workshops is we check in with them. We have a Q&A, what's going on with your hives, how many hives you have, very briefly. Do they have a burning question that really came to get answered? We talk about safety in the hives, bee stings, what to look for allergic reactions, first aid, equipment, and what to do if you need to euthanize a hive, especially in that apiary where we have garden members working, within a few hundred feet of us. If we have a very aggressive hive, we have to be prepared to euthanize them and explain to them how to do it. And we have the materials on site to do that as well. We do a session on smoker fuels and lightings, which we, of course, picked up from the apprentice program. How long can you keep a smoker going is really important. And we tested with different types of fuels. And some people don't like to use smoke, but I just say it's a safety issue for us. And we strongly encourage people to use it. But if nothing else, I say well, moving on. And then we talk about standing back and assessing hive temperament, watching the hives go in and out. When we open them, are the bees coming at us? Are they quiet? How are they moving on the frames? What's the sound? We're just trying to focus in on the temperament of the hive and what to look for. And then every single month we do a brood check. And we look for mites, and we talk a lot about mite prevention. And then we do a hive status on whiteboards so we can see what happened the prior month and what to look for the following month. And the core principle that we really emphasize is integrated pest management, which is similar to what the master keeping beekeeping program emphasizes. All the passive tools that you can use, all the mechanical tools that you can use, but then what do you do when you really need to address your mite problems? Then we talk about well, mostly we talk about, and what people are mostly interested in is, what are they looking at when they look at a frame of bees? They're really looking at, what does healthy brood look like? Is it creamy? Is it white? Can you see tracheas? Look for deformed wing virus. Look for chalk brood. And we've seen sac brood, deformed wing virus, and chalk brood in our hives. So, I'm sorry to say that we had those viruses, but they were really good for people to see what they look like. We talk about seasonal topics. In the beginning of the year, we really look much for queen cells, and what are the signs of swarming, and how strong is the hive, and how can we tell the hive is swarmed or not swarmed. We look at the brood growth and assess it from the prior month. We talk about the use of nucleus hives, how to keep them available for yourself for keeping the queen safe, or expanding your hives, or doing a split. Then we talk about, the honey super cycle and the nectar flow, and how to assess when to put those on or take them off. And then balancing resources in the hive. How can you transfer brood from one hive to another hive? Should you make a strong hive week to balance the loads between a sick hive, or should you let that hive dwindle and not compromise your strong hives? Then this month specifically, and last month, we did a lot of winter prep, and we talked about, you can see on the bottom there, quilt boxes. I use those in my own hives, and moisture boards, which are those homostat moisture absorbers. We've used both of them in the apiary. And then I have an example of a candy board if people feel like they need to feed their hives. But we really emphasize, making sure there's enough resources, enough pollen patties, honey, sugar, whatever else you need. And then we talk about, what are the signs of pests, pathogens, viruses, everything that we've already talked about. And that goes on all year long. At the end of the workshop, I follow up with an email to them, and I show them how to build that apiary bench, which is a useful tool because it prevents people from putting hive bodies on the ground. It's spaced enough that you can hang the frames between the two extenders there, and you can use it as a hive stand. So I send them an example of that and how to build one. This little pamphlet here, you can see the picture of it. It's from the University of Arkansas, and it's a great tool, and it's affordable, and it downloads as a PDF, so people can cut it out and turn it into a little pamphlet. I'm going to get the guild to actually print these out so we can hand them out. But it's essential. It's similar to the bee partnership. They have a very comprehensive, nice spiral bound book about pests and pathogens and what to do with them and how to recognize them. But it's a $36 little book. I have it in the apiary and I hold it up to people and show them. But this little one from the University of Arkansas is very accessible. It's cheap. And I also send them links of how to do an alcohol wash and a sugar roll, how to build a quilt box. All of these are extra links, and I'm happy to provide them to this presentation so people can follow up if they want to use them. And then I also have a Google form for surveying, how did they feel about the workshop? Did they get what they wanted out of it? Was it too much information? Not enough? Was it too long? And I've got a lot of really positive feedback from new beekeepers who think it's just right. But you can also see that in some of our responses, people would like to see, specialized stuff like queen rearing. So we're going to be doing that. Now, in terms of the other aspect of this program, the garden community outreach. So 4 times a year, I do a presentation to community members from the garden, and they are very interested in getting the honey. So that's a big draw. We say, bring your jars, we're giving out honey. And we've given out honey 3 times. I just extract it myself off of the hives and bring it in, gallon buckets. And right now I have 65 gallons sitting in my garage waiting for the next presentation. And I usually talk to them about what is the life cycle of the honeybees, what's going on in the hive, a relatively elementary level introduction into the hives. And also I talk to them about safety in the garden with bees. So we provide hats with veils if they feel uncomfortable that a bee is bothering them. And, we have my number there to tell me, for them to contact me if they feel uncomfortable about the activity of the hive or if there's a swarm. So we talk a lot about safety and bee stings and what to look for if they happen to get stung. So far, nobody in the membership has gotten stung, so I'm happy about that. We also did a bio blitz with native pollinators, and that's a whole other aspect of my education and outreach, because I really had to do a deep dive into learning about native pollinators and how many species there are and what their characteristics are and the taxonomy of them. And we had a bio blitz where members of the garden went out into our pollinating plants and looked for different types of pollinators, not necessarily only bees, but preferably bees. And we gave them tools and traps, and we used iNaturalist to help them record it. And we had a great event. So that's an example of the community outreach that has been ongoing with our partnership with the Ed Souza Park. So the next steps for the apiary is to find more people who would lead the the workshops, because I've been doing them all myself, and it requires me to be in town every month. And I'm happy to do it, but could use support. So I've already recruited our president and another member to help lead an experienced beekeeper. And last month, one of them showed up and we did it together jointly. I would make a recommendation. I would tell him what I'm going to talk about, and he would chime in with affirmation or another technique. So it was really great to get him on board and to see how the workshops run. We want to offer honey extraction because that's kind of a mystery for new beekeepers. And to choose some advanced workshops like queen rearing. And I would love to do a project would be a drone congregation spotting. You do them with actual those physical drones that go in the air. And you put a lure on it and you try to find areas where you can, where DCAs are kept. And then there's a woman who is a master beekeeper in Georgia, and she has a Map My DCA citizen science program, so we can participate with that. She's amazing. And then also develop native pollinator program for the guild members who want to learn more about natural pollinators. So that's coming up in 2023. So survey, I've gotten a lot of appreciation and feedback. I've gotten people often will just send me an email and maybe a follow-up question that they had, but I also developed a survey and gotten very positive feedback about the instruction, the format, and the duration. So it seems to be doing what it's supposed to do, the program, and it's a key program for the Guild. They are 100% behind it. They offer me all the support and budget that we can use, and I consider it a success, and very happy with the beekeepers that come. So about me, I live in Los Gatos, California. It's the South Bay of the South Bay area, and I have been a native California all my life. I have a history degree from UC Santa Cruz, and now in my retirement, I am more interested in native bees and pursuing my understanding of that worldwide insect population. It's the native bee program that I did for the outreach for the community has just really extended my interest in bees in general and my appreciation for honeybees as well. So that's it.
Wow, thank you, Elizabeth, for your commitment to serving on behalf of pollinators, especially in your general area and beyond. It's a pleasure for the California Master Beekeeper Program to acknowledge you as the next Master Beekeeper. We thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?